and welcome to On the Couch with Stephanie Colclough. I have great pleasure introducing the guest for today, and it's Martin Colclough, my husband, and we thought that for a change we'd interview your host so that you could delve into his life a little bit. Hello, Martin.
Hi, Stephanie.
First of all, your love of spiritualism, you have an absolute passion for it. You're also a minister, you work all over the world, you do healing, you do trance, all sorts of things. Can you tell us a little bit of how you came into this movement?
Yeah, it all started back on the 4th of January 1997, when my father passed to what we now call the spirit world. It was on a Saturday evening about 5 o'clock, and I went to my mother's house, and I went into my father's bedroom because he was in an ambulance outside the house. I just sat there asking for help, and no help came at that time. Anyway, he took him to the hospital, and sadly he died on the way to the hospital. But on the way home then, I dropped my mother off at home, and on the way home I kept hearing this voice in my head saying, go to the church. Just kept on and on repeating, go to the church. And I answered back saying, not knowing it was mediumistic at the time, I just thought it was my thoughts nagging me. And I said, I'll go to the church. I've got to tell my children first that their grandfathers died. And the voice stopped. So I went home and told my children that the grandfather had died. And on the Sunday, I was going back to my mum's house, as everybody does, to sort out arrangements and just to be with my brothers and sisters and my mum. I heard the same thing, go to the church, go to the church. So I answered, I've got to help my mum, I'm going to see my mum. And again, the voices stopped. But each time I was coming to and from my mum's house, I kept hearing this voice, go to the church. So then I said, I don't know what church. And as I was driving home, I realised there was a spiritualist church on the way home, and I looked to my left, and the voice said, go to the church. So I said, I'll make a deal with you. I'll go to the church. After everything's over, I'll go to the church. So I went back to work after a few days, and the funeral and everything. And the first time I attended was, I think it was the 16th of January, 16th of January. So about 12 days, well, it was exactly 12 days after my father had passed. And I said to the lady, the clerk at work, I said, I'm going to a spiritualist church tonight. She said, which one? And I told her, and she said, oh, I'm a member there. I'll take you. It can be quite daunting. So Julie Ward, her name was, she went with me to the church, and I had a message that night off a gentleman called Ron Madden. I've never forgotten him, never forgotten the message. And while I was standing round to get information, there was a picture on the wall of a gentleman who I now know to be Gordon Higginson. But that night I looked at the picture and I said, I wonder who that is. And the voice in my head said, that's Gordon Higginson. So I went to the president, his name was Eric, and I said, excuse me, I said, is that Gordon Higginson? He goes, yes, did you know him? I said, no, somebody's just told me. Somebody just told me the name in my head. And he never batted an eyelid. He never said, oh, you might be a medium, join the class. And I said, I want to learn what that man's just done. And he said, oh, you've got to join the church, and you've got to be in the church for so many months, and then you can join the awareness group. And I just knew I couldn't wait that long. The voices were already coming all the time, telling me, giving me instructions. And this lady, Susan, came up to me. She said, there's a new church opened. It's in Burslem. Why don't you go there? They're looking for members. So to cut a long story short, myself and my daughter, Stacey, went for a drive the next night, and we couldn't find it. And then all of a sudden, the door of the church opened, and framed in the doorway was who I now know was the healing leader. Sadly, Pete is past the spirit world now. I said, oh, it's there, look. So we went together. Stacey was developing with me as a young girl for a couple of years, and we went together, and it just went on from there. So that's how I got into it all.
Well, that actually leads me on to my next question. I know that you're a lover of developing your skill, or your gift, you choose to call it what you will. how did you develop? How did you begin developing? And how was that for you? How many years ago was that?
Well, it was probably a month after my dad had died, so we'd be into February, and we'd been in the church, and the president was a lady called Sally Harding, and she said, "We're starting a group up, stop nagging," because I kept nagging them for this beginners group, you see. She said, "Stop nagging, you've got the gift, you're getting the intermediate." So I'm thinking then, what's the gift? What is the gift? And what's this intermediate? I know what intermediate means in other things, but I wasn't sure what it meant within the realms of spiritualism. So they put me in the intermediates group, and to be honest, it was just going over my head. I hadn't got a clue. And the voice came back and was going, "Go to the beginning, go to the beginning." So at the end of the class, I went up to Sally. I said, "Sally," I said, "there's a voice telling me that I've got to go to the beginning. Please, can you put me in the beginners group, because I haven't understood a word you've said tonight." So she said, "Yes, I know," because she was very intuitive. She was always in link with the students. And the next week she put me in the beginners class, and I remember it so vividly. It was the first message I ever gave, and the room was full of ladies, and there was Elizabeth, there was a lady called Yvonne, Vivian, and a few others who I've just think these were the people that were involved. That's why I remember them. And we sat there, and this little girl came to me called Jane. She goes, "My name's Jane, and I want to tell my mummy I love her." So I said, "Who's your mummy?" And she said, "It's Elizabeth," sitting opposite. So when it came to my turn, I said, "I want to come to Elizabeth, and I've got a little girl here." Anyway, she didn't say I love mummy then. She started to tell me things, and she said we had French windows and it leads into my garden. She showed me a garden, this big beach ball, and a little blue and red tricycle. All that was explaining to Elizabeth, and Elizabeth could place everything I gave her. And then she said, "I just want to tell mummy I love her." Well, my emotion rose then, and I was like, and she just wants to say, and I was really trying to focus, she just wants to say, and then the emotion got the better of me. It's my first, evidential reading in mediumship. Of course, I was crying, the ladies were crying, the circle leader, Yvonne Sargent, was patting me on the back and saying, "Come on, you can do this, you can do this." And eventually I managed to say, she just wants to say, "Mummy, I love you." Well, to say we're all sobbing for about 5 minutes. I think the only one who wasn't crying was Yvonne, because she was the circle leader, trying to console everybody. And then it went on from there. I heard about the SNU, because to be a healer then, you had to train as a healer. Oh. So I really enjoyed the healing courses. So then I was looking at more courses. Started with what is now the SD1. I think it was then in days C20 and C21. They had separate courses for speaking and demonstrating. So I did them, and then I went on to do the SD2, and I worked for the Ministry of Defence. And at night, on my night shifts, I was just writing all these questions, because it's a quiet little training camp, nobody in through the week. It was only occupied at the weekend. And I must have done from SD1 to D5 and S5 in about 4 months. Why, I don't know, just cramming all these courses in. And then a dear friend of mine who's in the spirit world now said, "You can get awards, So I said, "Well, what are they?" And in those days, the CSNU S&D, speaking and demonstrating. And for those who don't know, the CSNU is Certificate of the Spiritualist National Union. So it's like a qualification. So I sat them, and it's just gone on. Then I did my diplomas. I've done other diplomas. I did my efficiency, which is the first step in the priesthood. Then I did my ministry. I've been on the NEC, the Train Awards. I've worked really hard in my development.
You have, and as I said, that shows. Everybody that knows you knows that you have a passion for learning and development, as you've written various courses in the latter few years. And you've also written 2 books as well.
Yeah.
One is it for beginners, I believe?
They're both for beginners, yeah.
All right, and the second one was quite successful, to do with trance mediumship. If we go back a little bit, so you're talking about your development at the beginning in the circle. How about your first public demonstration? How did you feel? How did that go?
But again, it was Sally. Sally was pushing me because I was 42 years old. My spiritual awakening happened at the age of 42. And it was an overdrive. I was sitting in any circle I could. And I was all over the place doing spirit art, not demonstrating, but spirit art had awakened in me, the healing, the demonstrating, the speaking. And we did what's called a fledglings night. And they let me do the fledglings night. And then Sally came to me and she said, I want you to come and work for me. And I said, what, do you want me to carry something? Not thinking she was inviting me out. And she went, no, you twit, I want you to come to work for me in a church. And it was Newcastle Christian Spiritualist Church. The president, who was Elaine Bagshaw. And no, she wasn't the president. She was a minister. I forget the president's name, but Elaine was the minister there, and she still has a lot to do with that church. And we went up, and Sally did the philosophy, and she was going to let me go first as the medium. So she did the philosophy because it was a divine service, and then they handed over to Martin Colclough. So I stood up. Still remember, again, I remember the first link. It was a man called David. He was going to his wife and his sister, who was sitting at the front of the church. And he was a lorry driver. He'd got these big boots on that I described, and everything was so accurate. Anyway, the end of that message, I always remember this great big midget gem was floating in front of me, which is like a little biscuit, for those who don't know, with hard ice and sugar on top. And it was floating towards his wife. And I said, he's just sending you a midget gem. And she said, oh, I love midget gems. And I said, well, he wants to leave his love with you. And I thought, you sit down then. But then another message was coming. So I did 5 or 6 messages, not thinking. Then Elaine said, it's time now, Mark, it's time to sit down. I was like, oh no, I've done the whole thing. I haven't let Sally do a link. And I turned round and Sally was sitting there with her arms folded, beaming from ear to ear.
Oh, that's lovely to have.
My first service, and it went really well. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, I'm sorry. It's lovely to have such an inspiration in your life, and I'm sure you've been an inspiration to many within your time within, well, your private life and your spiritual life. What has been, or who has been an inspiration to you? You've mentioned one there. What else, or who else has been an inspiration in your life?
Well, there was Sally, as we've mentioned already, and several others. I mean, my first circle leader was Yvonne Sargent, and then, you know, a name's gone out of my head, but I moved into her group. Frida's daughter, I can't, Tracy Horn. And then I heard about Gordon Higginson, and although I never met him, he died 4 years before I came into it. Gordon and his mediumship were a big inspiration on me, and I wanted to aspire to be like him. And I don't know if I've made it yet. Mm-hmm. I don't think he saw himself as a great medium. He saw himself as a great spiritual person and just developing, helping people to develop. And I'm sure he'd love it if people overtook what he achieved. Yeah. Also, in modern times, Minister Stephen Upton, who's along with a few others, Tim Abbott and Libby Clark, who we've interviewed, all those people gave me my chance at the Arthur Findlay College. And the reason I put Stephen first is he's trying to help me to develop photographic mediumship, you know, and we looked at it together and we changed it from spirit photography because there's other energies that people can photograph. And he had 2 books republished, The Case for Spirit Photography, and the name of the other one slips my mind. But just on the fact that we realise this form of mediumship has mostly been forgotten. So, you know, Libby, Tim, and Stephen, quite big influences in my life because of how they've supported me. Yeah. And now I try and support others in the same way.
Yeah. So. And also, you were in the military for many years, a military man. 24 years, you were in the army. Did you have any spiritual experiences in the army? Were you a religious man then? How did being mediumistic, or did you know you were mediumistic then? How did it affect that?
Like a lot of people, I had mediumistic experiences as a child, which I didn't think with mediumistic experiences. I thought it was a little boy who used to stand by the window in the bedroom where me and my brothers were, and I just thought it was a ghost. So, and I've interviewed a few people, and they've had similar experiences where they hid under the sheets, sweating and terrified, till they peeked and the little boy had gone. And you asked about my religion. I've always been a religious person, but it was in a very strict Christian upbringing. We were Methodists. When I said I'd had enough of Methodism, my dad sent me to the Baptist. When I said I'd had enough of the Baptist, he sent us to the Church of England up the road. My parents, it was to them, having a religious upbringing was very important. Yeah. And then when I joined the army, there were certain things that happened, little things that happened, things happening in my room, knocks, bumps, that other people weren't hearing. And I can remember when I was training to be a Lance Corporal, we were in Germany, and there was a training area called ACMA Training Area. And I was doing my Lance Corporal's cadre, as they call it. And we were out on a reconnaissance patrol, which is where you go out at night and you try to find the enemy. And we were on one side of the track in the tree line, and the other side of the track, I could see 3 men walking from left to right. And I nudged the person next to me. I say, "Look at them 3 men over there." And he goes, "What 3 men?" I said, "There." And I was pointing at these 3 men, and he couldn't see them. And he's saying, "Martin, there's nothing there." I said, "There's 3 men there. Look, and they're heading for the crossroads where we are going." Of course, nobody else could see these 3 men. And just little things like things that I didn't realise were mediumistic. One night, well, one week, my friend was away because we were in a 2-man room. We were both corporals, but I was a corporal by then. And he'd gone skiing somewhere in Bavaria. And I saw his bed creak as if somebody had lain on it. Now, I know the spirit world haven't got any weight, but somehow they impressed this on the bed. So they were always sort of tempting me with mediumistic experiences. And I just pretended. I said, "Okay, you've scared me now. Thank you very much." And little things like that through my life until the big awakening when my father died. Right. But what the military did bring into my mediumship was a discipline that I think you need. Yeah. So in the army, you don't follow blindly, but if somebody asks you to do something or tells you to do something, then you do it. Mm. So for my teachers, I was a joy because they say, "Right, we're going to do this," and I did it. "Oh, we're going to do this," and I did it. And I try to bring that in my teaching, try to get the students, just do what I'm asking, you'll find that it'll work if you just do what you're asked. Yeah. So, yeah.
So if we talk about trance now I know trance is a big part of your own development at the moment, yeah. And you obviously all teach it to others too. And it seems to be the new thing with mediumship that everybody loves trance. Tell me a little bit about how you began your trance development, and when did you do a public demonstration? How long did it take for you to do that?
Get there. Well, it's things start by, I think, in this. It starts when the time's right. It would be about 2 years after I first started, so about 1999. And there's a lovely medium who you knew yourself, Linda Carr. And she was putting on a trance mediumship workshop. So I thought, well, I'll go and see what this trance mediumship is. So we sat there, and there was about 8 to 10 of us in the group. Of course, Linda told you what to do, and I did it. And she was telling all the others off because they weren't doing what they'd asked her. And she said, "Do like Martin's doing here, you've got to do this." And I forget exactly what she was saying. I did everything she told me. And afterwards, another one who came up to me, and she said, "You've got the gift, You need to start studying this now as part of your development, not your whole development, but bringing it into your development." So I started to bring trance mediumship into development. And a lovely lady called Kath Jones, and she was an officiant of the Spiritualist National Union, a dear friend of ours. Yeah. Sadly, she's another friend in the spirit world now. And she'd started taking me out to churches to get me experience, get me known her on the circuit. And I told her about Linda and the trance. She goes, "Well, you can come and sit at my house. Just straight out of the blue, come and sit at my house. And you sit for me. Sit in my circle." And there was me, Kath, and Carol Dawson, another lady who a lovely lady, yeah. Remained a friend all these years. And we sat for years, 2, 3, maybe 4, I think it was 5 years. And then Kath and I parted ways over something silly, really. We didn't have one of these big fallouts like some spiritualists have, but I just stopped going to her house. And then I had a bit of a lull. I was sitting in different circles, but I wasn't sitting dedicated. Instead of, like 4 times a week, probably once or twice a week, or maybe once a fortnight. Anyway, I bumped into Kath again, and she went, "Oh, hello, Marty." I said, "Hi." I said, "Is there still a place in your circle?" By this time, I'd met you, so this is about 15 years ago. And she goes, "Yes, yeah." And I introduced you to you, and she said, "Well, why don't you both come and sit with me again at my house?" So we did, and we sat with her for, I think it was 3 or 4 years. Again, developing all the time, developing the trance mediumship. And we had some wonderful people coming through. Lovely evidence for you and Kath. Your grandmother came, for instance. Kath's husband, I remember, came one night. Gordon Higginson, who I never knew, came one night, completely unexpected, and gave Kath the most wonderful evidence that I couldn't have known. I couldn't have known the things he was telling her, and because those two were very good friends. And then my first public demonstration came about completely by accident, because I used to say to Kath, "When are we going to go public?" And she'd go, "You go public when you're ready." And that's all she'd say. And you didn't feel down about it. You didn't feel, "Oh, I'm a bad medium because Kath won't let me go public." That's all. And you know that. I say, "Are we going public?" She'd go, "No, when you're ready, you'll go public." And I must have asked her 6 or 7 times over the years, and it was always the same: "When you're ready." And yeah, I was the chairman of the accreditation committee in the Spiritualist National Union, and I put a roadshow on to get education, training awards and healing committees recognised by more people in the SNU. And at the end of the evening, we'd done a demonstration with myself, Jackie Wright, or should I say Minister Jackie Wright, and Lynn Parker, who's again officiant of the Spiritualist National Union. And the president came up to him, she was talking, she says, because I chaired, she said, "Do you demonstrate, Martin?" I said, "Yes." So what do you demonstrate? And I rattled off the list, thinking nothing of it. I said, mediumship, platform mediumship, private sittings, I do spirit art, the trance mediumship. She said, "Oh, do you do trance demonstrations?" And I'd said, I teach trance, so if I said no to trance demonstrations, then why am I teaching it? I said, "Yeah, of course I do." "Oh, can I book you?" It's like, uh-oh, here's that chance. Anyway, they hadn't got a space for a special for a year. So I got a year, I won't say to worry about it, but to think about it. And over that year, different times, different experiences were put in front of me. So I went to the Arthur Findlay College, and it was on one of Tim Abbott's courses, and he said, "Right, we're getting on the platform tonight. There's 3 of us sitting, I think it was." So 3 of us sat, and then I went to one of Libby's courses, and Libby had all 4 of us sitting, all in the trance state, giving information. And then Tim was running a course from his home. And I told him, I said, "Listen, Tim," I said, "I've got to thank you for the chance at Stansted, but I've got a public dem coming up. I want you to be on your course in your home, and just, not show me the ropes, give me a grilling, make sure I'm not kidding myself here, that I'm in a good trance state." And he said, "How long have you been developing?" I said, 17 years. He goes, "What makes you think you haven't got a good trance state?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, "That's just me." I said, "I've always been told by all my teachers to keep my feet on the floor. I want your opinion." And he said, "Okay." And he let me join the course. And we sat, and he goes, "Martin, you've got nothing to worry about." Of course, then the evening came, as you know, and you came with me. And we were a little bit late because of traffic. Traffic had held us up. When we got there, it was Terry who met me. I can't think of his other name. Sorry, Terry, if you're watching this, I forgot your name. At least I've remembered your first name. And he said, "Oh, do you want time?" I said, "No, I just feel I'm ready." I said, "I think I've been held up deliberately, so I haven't got time to panic." He goes, "Well, there's only 150 in." And I thought he was kidding until we walked through the door onto the platform, 150 people sitting in front of me for my first death. And it's like, well, this is what you wanted. Now you've got to deliver. Yeah. I remember writing in my journal went to Harry's tonight, did my first demonstration, 150 people in, about which guides came through on the evening. And there was 3 came through on the evening. There was Arthur, Edward and Jethro, all that do different things, gave a lovely demonstration. And it's gone on from there now. I'm teaching trance myself and just gone on.
Went really well, really good evening. Education is so important to you. Why is that? Why do you feel this urge to educate and, you know, put yourself out there as a teacher? Why is that? Why do you feel so drawn to education?
Because some people say spirit will teach you everything. Now, I don't deny that the spirit world, your spirit teams are probably your best teachers. But if you're relying on one group of teachers to teach you, you're only getting one perspective. And if you learn from different people, from different experiences, then it enhances your mediumship. One of the best forms of teaching, I think, or being taught, is when you're sitting listening to other mediums' experiences, listening to what they've done, what went right, what went wrong. And that's very much how I've written my books. It's where it went right for me, where it's gone wrong, and how I put it, you know, how I've corrected it and changed. But I think education is important. And those people who say that the spirit world will teach you everything, that's like saying you only need one geography teacher and he'll teach you everything. But if you want to go on and be a famous geographer yourself, then your teachers have got to get more and more experienced to teach you more and more different things. So that's why I think education is important. Yes, the spirit world will teach you some of the mechanics of mediumship. They'll teach you the law and how to connect with them, all different things. But then you need to learn things like how to present it properly, how to maintain the link with the spirit world when you're not sitting to deliberately just connect with them in, you know, in a meditation or an altered state of consciousness. So that's why I think it's important that we have different teachers. And that's why you mentioned me writing courses. I wrote 10 courses on different facets of mediumship, from inspirational speaking to spiritual healing, working in the altered states within mediumship at 2 different levels that were accepted by an awarding body, Focus Awards. And sadly, we've advertised it. And this is not why we've done this video. I'm just saying people feel they don't need a qualification. But the people that have gained it, and people like Tim Abbott have done it, Andy Ford, just 2 of the names that we've interviewed recently comes to mind, Gary Wright, Matt Grogan, all these people were experienced mediums and yet did these education courses and practical courses just to, I think what it does, if you do a course like that, it tests your knowledge. It shows you've got the knowledge, a bit like learning to be a London taxi driver. They don't just get the knowledge. They don't just give them a taxi and say, go and drive around London, which they could do, which is like an analogy saying, well, the spirit world will teach you everything. They have to drive around the streets, learning all the streets of London. And then they sit an exam. And in the exam, they're given different routes and you're asked how to get here, how do you get there? So that's why education is important. And educated, I think it was Harry Edwards, in one of his books that I've read on healing, because Harry was a very famous healer, he talked about educated healers. And that was through reading, through learning. It wasn't just about being in a connection with the spirit world. You know, Harry read hundreds of books. He wrote lots of books. He taught lots of people. So if we don't need teaching, why do all these famous mediums say that you should listen to other teachers? You should get educated. So for me, it's part of the development pathway that you educate yourself, not only in spiritualism, because not everybody takes the religion of spiritualism, but certainly in what we call in our non-denominational courses, spiritual disciplines. You need to be educated.
Having done a few courses myself, and then being in the spiritualist churches, you do find that people come up to you and ask you questions, and it's lovely having that knowledge and being able to answer them, as you said. So I completely agree with you there with the education. Now, I want to ask you about the word spiritual. What being spiritual mean to you? I know what it means to me, and I feel, my opinion, as though sometimes it's a little overused and used in the wrong context. But what does spiritual mean to you?
I think to be spiritual is to be yourself. It's not about being, well, it is about being kind to people, but it isn't that you have to go around acting in some strange way so that everybody says how spiritual you are. And yes, you're right. People do overuse the word and you go, oh, he's spiritual, he's unspiritual, she's spiritual, she's unspiritual. And the very fact that we're judging other people means that we aren't spiritual. If we've got to judge other people, then we're not spiritual people, because we've all spirit enjoying a physical experience, as I usually say in some of my philosophical addresses in the spiritualist churches. But to me, being spiritual is being as good as you can, knowing your mistakes. I mean, I'm a minister of the Spiritualist National Union, and I in no way think that I'm a saint, above anybody, or better than anybody. You know, when I'm cut up on the motorway, as you well know, or in traffic, sometimes the soldier kicks in before the minister, and I probably act in an unspiritual way. That doesn't mean I've become unspiritual because of one instance. So for me, being spiritual is caring for people, not giving all your money away, but just caring, giving a damn. Should I say that? You know, I'm my own spiritual now. I've said giving a damn, but we should give a damn about what's going on around us. Yeah. And like the young and the elderly, we've got a responsibility to everybody. We're all on this journey together. And it's time in lockdown now. As you know, I write for the Psychic World, and I was mentioning communication just before the lockdown, how people don't communicate face to face anymore, and it's all on this kind of media. Now we're stuck with this kind of media. People all over the world are communicating, whereas before it might be the odd Facebook thing. And yes, it's media, but at least they're seeing the face behind the mask, so to speak.
Yes.
So for me, being spiritual is just being as good as you can, as kind as you can, and as helpful as you can, and trying not to react or respond in a negative way if somebody's hurt you or upset you, because they've hurt their own spirituality, they haven't hurt yours. And how many times have you said something bad to prove that point? How many times you've said something bad and you've thought about it, you thought, I wish I hadn't said that. I really wish I hadn't said it. And that's you knowing that you've actually, for that moment in time, you haven't been very spiritual. Yeah. And I honestly say, and I don't mean to offend anybody when I say this, I don't need anybody to say I'm a spiritual man. I'm on my pathway, and I know when I'm good, I know when I'm bad, I know when I've been good, and I know when I've been bad. And when I get to the spirit world, it's going to be me who answers for that. I will have to answer. I'm not going to be judged by my peers, you know, above or below me, or nobody else. My life will be before me, and I will be judging myself and fitting myself for my place in the spirit world. So I try not to judge people now. And sometimes it's difficult. And if I find myself talking about somebody, I try to change it to bring out the positive rather than dwell with people who were talking negative about other people, because then you're not being spiritual. So you judge your own spirituality, basically. I think all that was trying to say.
I think it's about being a compassionate human being. And you
yes,
guys, we all know back in the back of our minds what's right and what's wrong. And it's about doing the right thing. So
yes.
I have one last question for you, Martin, and it's one that you've asked all the other people that you've interviewed. What if you give one piece of advice to all those budding mediums, or whatever you want to do in life, what would that be?
Well, everybody have asked that. You can't give one piece of advice because one piece leads on to another. But I think I can't remember, I think it was Sheila French who said the same. Just be yourself. Everybody's journey is different. Don't try and be like another medium. Have your own mediumistic experiences. And I call them IMEs now, individual mediumistic experiences, because everybody's journey is different. And through these interviews, that's what we've tried to show people, that we're all different. We've all had different awakenings. The awakenings have been at different times. We've all taken different journeys, but we're all heading in the same direction. So don't try and be like anybody else. Try to vary your tutors. You know, I think it was Val Hood said it on her interview. Have different tutors, so that I liken mediumship to having a big toolbox, and each tutor will give you a different tool to put in that toolbox. And some of the tools you may never ever use, and some of the tools you may use 1 or 2 times, but the other tools become your own, because you're building that toolbox and you'll use them over and over again. So please try to have your individual experience rather than looking at somebody else's experiences. That would be my advice.
Sounds like good advice to me. I'd like to thank Martin Colclough for being on the couch with me today. It's been a pleasure to interview my husband. Thank you.
I'd just like to say that my wife insisted that I did it, and being a good husband, I obeyed. Thanks very much, Steph.